15-0. 30-0.
In today's tennis, the serve has become the player's most important weapon, enabling players to impose their game from the start of the rally and accumulate points without actually playing them.
$40-0.
The serve proves extremely useful on fast surfaces. The best servers on the professional circuit average more than 1,000 aces per year, a rate of 20 per match. At over 200 kilometers an hour for the men, and slightly less for the women, service speed has increased through improvements in equipment, but also because of players' desire to simply serve harder. Speed, nevertheless, does not come at the expense of precision. The playing areas have become smaller, the flight trajectories of the ball have become more varied, and the angles more and more unexpected. The corners at the junction of the center service line and the service lines themselves have become a favored target when serving for aces, presumably because they are placed on a line where the net is at its lowest point. Conversely, through the use of spin on first serves, the ball moves diagonally across into areas that are way off center, forcing the receiver into positions of great uncertainty. Nowadays, when playing against powerful servers, breaking serve has become quite an achievement. Among the top players, we find more and more tall players with devastating serves. Many smaller players have found a way to train themselves physically and technically in order to overcome their shortcomings in this vital area of the game. Today, they can pride themselves on producing a respectable number of winning serves and even aces. But aces are only the tip of the iceberg. They are nothing compared to the considerable amount of points that are won thanks to the advantage gained by serving. When a good server gets his or her first serve in, 9 times out of 10, they will end up winning the point. For women, the supremacy of the serve has not yet been accepted as a fundamental principle. But things are evolving. Young girls are becoming more athletic, and one can expect that for them too, in the future, the serve will be dominating. We have come a long way since the days when serves were simply used to put the ball into play. The first attempts at gaining the advantage came with the use of spin, which explains the wide selection of treacherous serves that came into existence at the beginning of the century. With Tilden, that great tennis pioneer, the modern serve was born. After him came Gerald Patterson from Australia. And 20 years later, Donald Budge from America. But it is really with Rod Laver that today's techniques were first used. Today's serve involves the optimum balance between greater precision and maximum power. Without trying to break up a movement that should be executed in one continuous action, we nevertheless can distinguish 2 phases. In the first one, the server builds up their energy. In the second phase, they unwind this energy in a succession of muscular contractions and releases which follow on from the lower to the upper part of the body. Like a wave that builds from the player's feet upwards to the racket head, the serve unfolds just like a crack of a whip. When the player puts his full might into the serve, he will naturally be propelled forward towards the net. In order to play this precision stroke successfully, players put as much care into the way they position themselves as they do into carrying out the ritual which is tirelessly repeated and never changed. This ritual is the visible sign of their concentration. It changes in form and length with every player. This is the moment when the players check their grip. It is also the moment when they decide what direction, force, and spin the ball will have. Even though some champions take up starting positions that are very personalized, such as feet that are very close together, an open angled racket face, or a cocked wrist, these habits most likely add nothing to the excellence of their game. Most men and women players stick to classic stances which contribute to a sound preparation. Feet shoulder-width apart in a line that points toward the service box. Hips and shoulders slightly turned. Arms relaxed. The racket cradled with the left hand pointing towards the opponent. The body weight forward. These are the basic starting elements for a good serve. It all begins with a backward motion of the body, as if the player was trying to find the right rhythm and to gather momentum. This impression is strengthened by the toes lifting off the ground, a movement that can clearly be seen with some top players. At the same time, both arms move down together and then separate to go back up. A good toss is the first essential element to a successful serve. In order to get the desired precision, the arm stays extended and the ball is kept up in the air as long as possible. The hand opens up completely so as to avoid the fingers holding back the ball. The sideways extension of the arm helps the rotation of the chest. In most cases, the arm rises between the plane of the front foot and the plane of the baseline. With some players, the upward extension of the arms remains quite synchronized. But a discrepancy between the motions of both arms is something many great servers have in common. And so is the loose wrist as the racket swings up. The combination of the discrepancy and the looseness in the wrist creates a delay which can become a source of acceleration. The upward swing can take on different aspects, often very direct and compact with players who use sheer strength when serving. It has great amplitude with players who get their power from the swing. Although players may differ in the way they serve, in the end, they all have one thing in common, and that is the way they rotate their shoulder, and more generally their body to prepare to hit the ball. Pulled up by the left shoulder, the line of the shoulders tilts more or less backwards, with the elbow positioned in the continuation of this line. With some players, the elbow is clearly pulled back, and this increases rotation and contributes to a winding up effect comparable to the one observed for the forehand. This rotation of the shoulder is not a pause in the stroke. It is in fact a shift to a position where the upper body is held under tension. This tension then releases the arm like a spring, and the ball is hit full force. This undulating movement starts from the ground. The flexing of the legs matches the pulling back of the arm, and when they release, the body extends into contact with the ball. The degree of the flexing is not directly connected to the strength of the serve. The effectiveness of the serve is determined by the exact extension of the legs in the unwinding process. Whatever the position of the feet at the start, some players like to readjust their feet when their legs are fully bent, enabling the upward force to be more evenly distributed onto both legs. But this is not a rule, and some very good servers just push up with the front foot. The wave of muscular contraction then moves upward, causing a straightening up of the chest, which had arched under the double effect of the knees and hips moving forward. This wave, which increases upwards and forwards, becomes amplified in the loop, at the point where the racket goes down, and at first, back, before swinging up towards the impact. The power loop sometimes only starts from the cocked back position. But in most cases, momentum is gathered much earlier, and the head of the racket is already in motion when it reaches this position. By stopping in the continuation of the line of the shoulders, the elbow creates a temporarily fixed point around which the loop swings, and the slackening of the wrist enables the racket to drop along the player's back. This drop has hardly begun when the shoulder tilt, which accompanies the upward projection of the elbow, releases the final whiplash. The counterbalancing effect of the hand lowering and the elbow ascending will considerably increase the speed of the stroke. As the elbow projects upwards, it pulls ahead of the racket and sets up the required conditions for an explosive impact. The extension of the elbow, the rotation of the forearm, and the action of the wrist will then combine to impart the final acceleration on the racket head. The arm and the wrist have thus taken over the last relay from all the muscular actions, which unwound from the feet up to the upper body, enabling the racket to strike the ball harder than it would for any other stroke.
Go, 7 match, Sampras. 6-3, 6-4, 6-7, 2-6, 6-3.
Jeu 7 match, Sampras. 3 manches à 2. 3-6, 6-4, 7-5, 4-6, 6-2.
Jeu 7 match, Sampras. 6-7, 4-6.
He started missing a little bit finally. I mean, he was very solid for the first couple sets, and he finally gave me an opportunity, and I served extremely well. I mean, that was the one shot that won me the match because it was very short points, and the longer the match, the more fatigue I was getting, so.
These complex mechanics can only take place with players who have both very loose shoulder joints and sufficient muscular strength. Some players, striving to increase their performance, take advantage of the speed gained by the racket during the loop and let it go outside the trajectory of the swing. This enables them to gather additional momentum, which exaggerates the following pronation movement and results in an extreme rotation of the forearm, which is most noticeable in the follow-through. A few players who are nevertheless among the best servers have a very strong forearm and hand action, which significantly increases the speed of the racket head in relation to the arm. This powerful action leads to a shortening of the end of the stroke. Simultaneously, the vigorous extension of the legs has culminated in a leap, which varies in height and form from one player to another. The contact with the ground is most generally re-established with the takeoff foot, and in order to achieve better balance, most of the great servers use a hop. Advocates of the scissors jump are becoming more and more rare, although this technique has long been considered the most adequate for approaching the net. If the first serve has turned into a real point-making machine, the second serve has also become harder, more aggressive, and faster. At first simply used to put the ball in play, it has also now become the means of taking the advantage over the opponent and imposing one's game. And for some, it resembles a first serve so closely that serving winners and even aces is no longer an exception. Spin more than strength is what enables one to differentiate between the two serves. The spin, mostly topspin, is obtained by a more lateral motion of the racket at contact, brushing the ball and changing its flight path. A brushed stroke can only be obtained with a toss of the ball that is further to the left and not as far forward. At the point of impact, the racket is still going upwards. The turning of the forearm and the action of the wrist come into play, making the stroke more dynamic and thus accentuating the rotational effect. But the shape of the stroke is nothing without rhythm, which imparts life to the overall movement. Rhythm, which varies with each player, is closely dependent on the height of the toss. Many men and women players toss the ball very high. That is why they clearly slow down their movement and sometimes even stop it when the arm is cocked back. Others prefer to toss the ball just above the point of impact. The movement then becomes more continuous as the racket goes into the loop without stopping. But in all cases, it is in this loop that they find the amazing energy that propels the racket head at its highest speed. That is why, in spite of all the differences in the starting positions, they all look alike in the end.